All right, we're good to go.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the August meeting of the MARC Radio Club. My name is Rich Russo, KB3BZL. I'm the president. What I'd like to do is go around and ask people to identify themselves and their club affiliation. I'm going to start with anyone whose call sign ends with an A, B, or a C. Would you please announce yourself?
Yeah, this is Al, N3EA, and my club affiliation, well, I got 4 or 5 of them, but we'll say the West Palm Beach Amateur Radio Group in Florida.
This is Tom, AF4NC. I'm a member of Warminster, Penn Wireless, QCWA, the Maui Amateur Radio Club, and High Point, North Carolina Radio Club, and ARRL, and a whole lot of CW groups. Thanks.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Walt Beatty, AA3WB, and I'm a member of MARC and Pottstown and Philmont.
Fred, K2HA, and I'm a member of MARC and Marple Newtown.
I'm Bill Kennedy, and I'm a member of Mid-Atlantic Radio Club.
Your call sign, Bill?
K3KC.
Thank you. All right, let's move.
K3DMC, Chip here. I'm actually a founding member of this club and then also Mid-Atlantic, or Marple Newtown. Although I was in high school back at the time that this club got started back in '75 with Al and that crew.
Okay, anyone with a D, E, or an F in call sign?
This is Andy, K3JSE. I'm with the Chester County Aries Races.
Good evening. My name is Jacek and call sign KC3HXF, and I'm member of Warminster Amateur Radio Club and the Frankfurt Radio Club.
Hi, this is Jim, W3JNF, member of the MARC Club, Marple Newtown, and PDRA.
Anyone with a G, H, or an I? Anyone with a J, K, or an L?
Good evening. This is Ron, November Yankee 3 Juliet with the Penn Wireless Association in Bucks County.
Over on YouTube, we have Andre, AF3IL. He's checking in from Marple Newtown.
This is Rich, N2EHL, Delaware Valley Radio Association.
Anyone with an M, N, or an O?
Hey, this is Alan, AB3FN, MARC, and others.
WB2BXO, Frank in Northeast Philadelphia, currently a member of Holmesburg, Hark.
Hey, this is Jim, WA4YWM. I'm a Warminster Amateur Radio Club member.
This is Steve Maslin, NS4M, formerly N30RH, Brandon Amateur Radio Society in Florida.
Okay, anyone with a P, Q, or an R?
This is Jeremy, N2ZLQ, VP of MARC.
Anyone with an S, T, or a U?
This is Dave, WB3EHS in Malvern, a former longtime member of MARC in the Carter and K era, recently rejoined.
This is Austin, Kilo Alpha 3, Tango, Tango, Tango. I'm a member of Holmesburg Amateur Radio Club and Handy Ham and a bunch of CW and QRP groups.
And this is Dennis, K3DS. I'm the FCC license holder for WB3JOE and MARC, and I'm also a member of K3TU, the Temple University Amateur Radio Club, the only reasonably active amateur radio club at the moment, but Villanova is coming up in a quick second.
Anyone with a VW or an X?
Oh, this is W3WHK, Saul in Fox Chase, Philadelphia, Holmesburg Amateur Radio Club, and Frankfurt Radio Club.
Gary Merkin, WA3SVW in Sewell, New Jersey, from the Gloucester County Amateur Radio Club, GC ARC.
This is Ken, K3FKW, and Wireless and QCWA clubs.
Anyone with a Y or a Z?
I guess that means Ned, WQ3Z. Actually, we're going to announce on Sunday night, announced 40 years of MARC nets. And I guess I'm approaching 40 years of MARC meetings, which of course for Al makes me a kid. But I bought my first amateur radio at the MARC Hamfest at the 309 Drive-In in August of 1980. So we're celebrating 40 years. Also a member of Montgomery County Racy's ARES. WQ3Z standing by.
If I talk, my name is Steven. I'm WA3ZGT. I'm very inactive, but hopefully going to be more active in the future. I'm not really a member of anything at the moment.
Okay, anybody that we missed that has joined and hasn't checked in yet?
Vince, WA380I, good evening. I'm a member of MARC, Philmont Mobile Radio Club, the Marple Newtown Radio Club, and the Philadelphia Digital Radio Association.
Well, thank you everybody for checking in. All those members and guests, thank you for coming tonight. I'd like to run through our business portion as quickly as possible so we can get to our guest speaker. I don't think Lou is here tonight, so we don't have a treasurer's report. Our secretary, Jim Foster, anything to report?
Nothing to report. I want to save some time here and get to the program.
Okay, Ted Zarcone's not here. Public Service, Bob Palin is not here. Dennis, Technical Services.
Nothing to report.
Okay, you want to plug the sales just once?
Yeah, some of you have gotten emails from MARC with a circulating list of equipment that was donated by a fine member of MARC for the benefit of the club. We didn't have a Hamfest this year, so we really can use the benefit. If anybody would like to see what's still available, you can send me k3ds@arl.net, and I'll be happy to send you the list of what's still available. I think the prices are priced to sell, as they used to say.
Thank you, Dennis. Vice President Jeremy, is there anything you have to report for the good of the group?
Nothing major. I mean, obviously we didn't have the Hamfest this year, but hope springs eternal for 2021. Really looking forward to tonight's speaker. So I guess we'll come back to that when we're ready.
Okay. One last call. Any club member have anything for the good of the club?
I'm not a club member, but I'd like to say that I hear some extraneous noises in the background. Perhaps you could remind everyone to mute themselves unless they are speaking. Please.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion.
Question from Ned, WQ3Z. Question from Ned.
Yes, Ned.
Is the expectation that we'll also be helping with the fire company fair next year?
I would assume that would be the same for next year, but there is no fair this year. So nothing happened.
Okay, thank you.
That remains to be seen. Okay, any guests have anything for the good of the group? Okay, Jeremy, I will let you take over at this point for our presentation. If you would do our intro, we would appreciate it. Thank
All
you,
right.
everybody, for attending.
All right, thanks. Great to see a good turnout tonight from neighboring clubs. We do have some good presentations coming up. Next month on September 29th, also a Tuesday evening, we're going to have Tim Duffy, who is the CEO of DX Engineering, a little outfit you may have heard about. And he's going to be talking about antenna building. Next year in January, we're going to have Ed Fong joining us from California. He's going to be talking about antenna design and a variety of topics related to that. He's really a guru in antenna building. We do have some other presentations on the way, but we should be meeting on Tuesday nights, probably the same place. Maybe there'll be a change to the Zoom link, but hopefully it'll be the same, assuming that there's no technical issues. All right, so without further ado, I want to present tonight's speaker. This has been a while in planning, and we're really excited about this. We're welcoming Dr. Bob Heil, K9 EID. His name is synonymous with high-quality sound equipment and has been for decades. He founded Heil Sound back in 1966. He's also been very active and an innovator in amateur radio. He's also advocated and really pioneered the movement toward home theaters and really high-quality home sound installations. So from his youngest ages, Bob has been a musician. He's played the organ, in fact, still plays the organ. He's also worked with a variety of bands, working on their sound equipment and their touring, including some people you may have heard of, Grateful Dead, The Who, Peter Frampton, Joe Walsh, and others. And in fact, in 2007, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So Bob is a veritable encyclopedia of information about sound and getting the best performance out of your equipment. And tonight he's here with us to share the science of sound with some practical hints and tips. And again, during Bob's presentation, please shut off your cameras if you can and mute your mics unless you have a question to ask. So with that, let's give a warm MARC welcome to Bob Heil.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Jeremy. Everything sound okay? We all right here for you?
Yeah, sounds good.
Good. First of all, I have to show you this. That was my radio club back in Marissa, Illinois in some early days. MARC, of course, it's not there any longer, but I thought that was kind of fun. Been wearing my mask all day, but since I'm in my studio by myself, I don't have to do that. How terrible it is, though. And I really applaud you guys for doing the Zoom meetings. We're doing a lot of these. I do several a week. And I really think it's a great thing because we have to stay together in all of this. Well, I thank you for having me. And we're going to get into some things. I'll give you just a couple of minutes of history about where I came from and all that good stuff, because it all has to do with what happened in the end. And that was working with so many people in the, I guess, the entertainment industry. But ham radio has been there from day one with me. 1956, I became a technician. You'll notice the Harvey Wells and the SX99. Harvey Wells is still with me. It's, oh gosh, you can't see it. It's down underneath the that table. I use it in the mornings on AM. We do a lot of work on AM with all the old stuff. But anyway, it was so interesting because I had been on the air for about, maybe 2 weeks. And I heard this call, but it was weird. I thought, wow, how can he be so distorted? Now, I understand this is 6 meters. This is 1956. There was no single sideband really of any consequence yet. But this guy was on sideband. And being inquisitive with my new station, I twirled a couple of the knobs on the, I didn't know what I was doing on the SX99, and bingo, up comes this call. And I'm going, ooh, hello. And I went back to him, and it was K0DGE. Now, as a ham, you don't know each other in the beginning. You don't know who they are, what they do. And each night I would work him. I was 50 miles away from him in 6 meters. And I was just fascinated with what he was doing. He was building this 6-meter sideband rig. Nobody was doing that outside of this. And he took me under his wing. And he had invited me to come down and spend time at his workplace. He gave me the address, and as I pulled up, it was KMOX, CBS Radio. Larry Burrows was the chief engineer. And he built one of the 1956 QST Tony Vitale cheap and easy sideband. I wonder how many guys remember that great article that started it all. But he built it for 6 meters. And I'd go down to see him, and a couple of times that I went, I said, hey, can I have you build me one of those? Oh, no, I can't do that, but I can teach you how. And he did. And it was the beginning of my life. It was amazing what happened from there. I quickly got into 6 and 2 meter sideband. That's 1959, 58, 59 in those years. That was a kilowatt on 6 meters and 2 meters. I had built my own rig. You'll see a 20A in that rack behind me. And he taught me how to take the coils out on 20 meters, wind up 6-meter coils, inject 36 megs from a little oscillator we built, so on, and run it into the Johnson 6 and 2 Thunderbolt that I built as a young kid. And wow, but I needed an antenna. I needed a big antenna. And I was very fortunate that I was asked in 1959 by Bob Drake. He called me on the phone and he asked me to come to their club meeting. He said, we do this club meeting once a year, and we have people come in and do workshops and stuff. And we would like to have you come and visit us and tell us about that rig you built. So I go there to the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Dayton, Ohio. It was one of the first Dayton hamventions. There were 600 people there in the Biltmore Hotel. And they cleaned out all the rooms. One room were all the Collins guys, the Mosley guys, Wes Shum, Leo Myerson. They were all there. These were rock stars to me that I had been reading in the magazines about. And here I was, placed in the middle of them, and to tell people how I had built this 6 and 2 meter single sideband. Well, while I was there, this guy came to me, and he was from England, a little kid from Southern Illinois. I was fascinated by his speech. He said, we need to use you for an experiment. We have an antenna, and we want to do some experiments. And so he sent me this antenna, and a couple of my good ham radio buddies. One of them was a Motorola dealer locally in Southern Illinois there. And we put it up with a crane, and my parents were so loving. Oh my gosh. I had the most loving parents ever. Beside this, back in 58, I put up a 110-foot Roan with a 36-foot long Telerex for 6 and the 36-foot long for 2. I was serious about VHF. I never listened below 50 megacycles for 17 years. I didn't need to because the bands are open all the time. And it was a fascinating time in ham radio. I mean, it was incredible. Well, at the same time, all of this is going on, congruently with the fun I was having there, I ended up playing the organ that my parents had bought me when I was 12, bought a Hammond B organ, the Model B. And I was 12 years old. 2 years later, I got a job in a restaurant making $50 a week. And I'll tell you what, for 2 nights work in 1954. Hey, that's all I needed. That's how I got to buy all this equipment and all that. Anyway, had such a good time. But a year later, I became the organist at the Fox Theater. Now, this has a lot to do with you guys. And you're going to say, what the heck are you talking about? What do you mean, man? What happened here was, yes, I became the substitute, but that organ hadn't been played in 20 years. So it needed to be tuned and voiced, mainly voiced. And what that meant was we had to go there after hours, of course. There were about 6,000 pipes in that organ. Stan Can was the organist, and he took me under his wing. And that's just a few of the pipes. But you see, they're all different lengths because of the tuning, but that's not the trick. Anybody can tune them on octaves. But the one trumpet standing beside the next trumpet standing beside, they had to sound the same harmonically. You had to learn to listen, mentally listen, not just hear. A lot of people just hear, okay, I hear that, I hear that, I hear that. No. We need to listen, dissect what you hear. And the problem is, a lot of people don't know how to listen. Well, I was taught to listen, and I didn't know how that was going to guide several of my careers. But amateur radio was my college professor. I was building all kinds of things. And I didn't realize what was ahead of me, but I was experimenting and building and just having more fun than I was supposed to. But in 1966 through 78, the filaments went cold. I was QRT. And the reason is that I opened a little music shop in Marissa, Illinois, 50 miles southeast of St. Louis. And the Fox Theater, I hadn't been there in several years and wasn't playing at the time. I go by one day and they were giving away, well, they didn't know, they had these big speakers out in the parking lot. And I go in and ask the manager that had been there when I was playing years ago. I said, what are you doing? He said, we're getting a new sound system. You noticed up in the left of this upper left where a Heil sound was stenciled on there. Those were 2 of the 8 speakers they gave me. Those were Olson bins, along with several others that Olson had done. Harry Olson was quite an engineer for Western Electric, and they're the people that built those things. And Altec Lansing, those were actually Altecs. But I got into building speakers. We opened our own fiberglass plant. You can see me standing in front of them down below. I didn't like the way the big speakers resonated. Fiberglass was very dense. So we would do that with fiberglass. And we did all kinds of things. A curved array up there I built for Jeff Beck. That's another story. But the phased linear amplifiers, crown amplifiers, just wonderful stuff. But in those years, I was on the road, and it was a fascinating time for me because you're looking at a guy that have never tasted beer. I've never smoked a cigarette, and yet I'm running around with the biggest drug addicts on the planet. And a piece of history happened one night, 1970. You can look this up, go into Google and put the night rock and roll sound was born. Now, I didn't know that no one else had been doing this because I was listening to George Wright, Jesse Crawford, all these great theater organists. I wasn't listening to rock and roll. I hardly knew the Beatles were, really. And so I get this call from the manager of the Fox, the stage manager. You still have those big speakers? And I said, yes, sir. He said, we got a problem. What's the matter? He said, talk to this guy. They came in here tonight and their equipment got confiscated by the DA last night in New Orleans. They came in here, didn't know that because there were no cell phones. The band came on, but the sound people, they're in jail. They took them out of the theater the night before. And it's all true story. It's all written for you. The night rock and roll sound was born. He said, "Can you bring that thing up here? You got it working?" Yeah, I got it working. So we piled it all in and got up there about 9 o'clock. The band was the Grateful Dead. And I became very good friends with Jerry Garcia, Bob Weir. These guys, I was a very different person than them, cultural wise, but I had a soldering iron and I could make them sound good. Oh, yeah. And I could drive their truck, and I did. But it went on from there. Peter Frampton, Joe Walsh, just on and on and on. And some of the greatest acts in the world as it went on after then. The Joe Walsh story is really fun. After the Dead thing, that I didn't know where we were going, but a couple of years before that was kind of interesting. I was asked to take some of the system on tour. So we got a short little tour of this band we're going to probably manage, and it's in Ohio. Would you want to do that? Well, I had never been on a tour before. So we threw a couple of the big speakers in the truck and a couple of my kids that work for me. We go to Ohio, and it's the James Gang. That was Joe Walsh's band. And about the second night into that little tour, we figured out we were hams, and you know what happened there. We've been such dear friends all these many years. But he was a great help to me because I'd come up with ideas, and he would ask me to do things. Hey, try this, try that. We're hams, man. We had soldering irons. We didn't care if it didn't work. Maybe it would. And a lot of times it did. So we just continued on, and it was such a remarkable thing. But one day my life changed big time. Paul Klipsch called. The phone rang. I picked it up and I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "That you, Heil?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "There's a Klipsch here." And I'm going, "Oh, this is God on the other end of this phone." And he wanted to know about this. At that time, the sound system was 10,000 watts. He said, "I don't believe it. A 10, 20,000 watt PA." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I want to come and see it." So he did. Flew his airplane up to Marissa, Illinois, going through all of this stuff. I had a 20,000 watt set up back in the shop, and he couldn't believe it. But what happened from there was really cool. I figured he was going to cut me off at the knees. He didn't at all. It was, "Why did you do this? Or why did you do that?" Da, da, da. Put me in his airplane, flew me down to Hope, Arkansas that night, spent the night with he and his wife, Belle. And the next day was incredible. He taught me so many things. Now, he didn't do it that minute, but he pointed me. You got to do this, got to do that. You want to go read all of the things you can get your hands on about what happened in the 20s with AT&T and Western Electric. Western Electric was the manufacturing arm of AT&T. You guys might want to go check this out. It's fascinating, fascinating history. And so there's just not enough that I could tell you and what that meant to me to have Paul Klipsch teaching me what was going to happen. This little music shop I put together in 1966, by that time has just about been the rock and roll capital of the world. That's no kidding. It was amazing what happened. But I got tired of the road. I mean, we did 12 years, 6 nights a week. There's quite a history there. Well, we might touch a couple of things later, but I kind of got tired. So I sold this store. And what happened was another one of those magical things. Because I was a ham, there again, ham radio meant so much to me. I got into satellite television. What was cool about it was we hams, we experiment. And I put together a dish system and all that. And I would go down to Oklahoma City, where Bob Cooper lived. Now, I remember that big antenna you saw a little bit ago. I used to talk to Bob from Marissa, Illinois to Oklahoma City on 2-meter moon bounce. 1962, we were doing this. I didn't know. We were just hams having a heck of a good time and learning a lot of stuff. Well, Bob Cooper was holding classes in his backyard, and they were teaching TV dealers to be satellite dealers. But a lot of these guys are ham radio operators. That was the fathers. All these guys gathered, dozens of them, and they were the fathers of that home satellite movement. He had a magazine called Coop's Digest, monthly backyard classes in Oklahoma. It was great. So I started getting serious about that. Living down in Southern Illinois, there were people that they couldn't get television. They were at least 100 miles from any TV station. So here I come with my my testing stuff. The one up at the top was cool. I was a Thunderbird net. I had a 55 bird that we restored, and that dish folded up like an umbrella. You can see a little 7-inch TV monitor in there, and I'd pull up in somebody's yard because we had to check the way a satellite television. You couldn't just put that thing down. There was too much going on with all kinds of microwave back and forth with the phone systems. So I would pull up and make the chest, and then we would build them. We put in thousands of them. It was a lot of fun. But there again, ham radio. If it wasn't for ham radio, I would not have been able to do that. But I had a little bit of an audio background because of the pipe organ, learning how to listen. And I started playing with audio because what am I supposed to watch HBO and listen to these silly little speakers? I don't think so. So I started building real deal home theaters. And what happened there, we were building $200,000, $300,000 rooms for some of the St. Louis Cardinals guys, Jack Buck and Ozzie Smith and all kinds of people, celebrities and around. Then it got to be around the country. And we would build these in that same plant that we used to build all the big audio systems. So it was a fascinating time in my life, and all because of ham radio. But it was serious home theater. Crown, JBL, Macintosh, Phased Linear, Pioneer, Klipsch, all of the great names. That's what we would do in these rooms. And we built many, many rooms with all of those great things. But then I got into designing. That picture on the left, we went into this place. It was just a front room in an old house. You see what we did to it on the right. And I got very, very involved with the builders, with people building new homes, and we designed the rooms because we didn't want any parallel walls. You want walls that are not parallel, so that if the sound comes to you and hits the back wall, if it's just a box, it's coming back to you out of phase. Oh no. And that sounds weird. If you can take these balls and tilt them, or the ceiling, it'll come from the source, but then it's going to go somewhere else. That's why they sound better. You probably never thought about this. You go into a theater. What happens? It's all kinds of slanted walls. So that really was a big thing for me. And we got together with designers and did all their couches and stuff. It was just great fun. I was invited to a CES show. We started doing those. I did about 4 or 5 of them during the mids of '85 for Pioneer. And one day this guy comes up to me and said, would you mind hooking up my new receiver? We have a receiver and we want to put it into the home theater. So we were at CES, the big show, with Pioneer, with one of my theaters, and that was Ray Dolby. Met Mr. Dolby and worked with him, and we were the first to bring ProLogic onto the market. Nobody had ever heard of it yet. And so these are just such wonderful things that God has presented to me. I just can't tell you how wonderful this is to be able to work with these guys. But again, it was all because of ham radio. Everything I did. Well, one of those CES shows, I had the big theater and the seats and the motorized curtains and all that. A guy came to me and he wanted me to help him teach. It was Tomlinson Holman, the creator of THX at Skywalker Ranch. We became very, very good friends. He had done some things earlier with me, but this was a big deal for this little kid from Marissa because we were with the greats. We're talking, the whole thing, Spielberg and George Lucas and all that, and helped develop the THX sound. So this really went crazy. But in 1986, I was standing in front of a guy that had went to one of our theater presentations at CES, and he said, I would like for you to come to Minneapolis. And it was Stanley Hubbard Jr. If you don't know that history, that's another really great piece of history. The Hubbard family, they were the first guys to do early radio, first guys to have a television station, on and on and on. And they're still in business, of course. But that grandson, he paid $60 million to buy a space on a satellite, a K-band satellite. It was the first one. And for many years, it was actually, I think about 15, he sat on it. What was he doing? He was developing DirecTV. And in 1991, he sent down one of the test dishes, and I was one of the 10 on the test team for DirecTV. Again, why? Ham radio. And so I know it's kind of crazy. I was on television for about 5 years here in St. Louis doing the news thing. That mid picture you see of me holding the dish, that was ABC, and that was the first that we had announced that DirecTV was going to be ready on ABC television. And I was on KMOX for 25 years with Jim White. Many of you might have listened to those programs. High Tech Heil. We brought from 1977 on. We brought the news of new things. Things like I'd go to a CES show and get all these gadgets. And one time they sent me home with a disc that we were going to put music on that disc. It was going to be called the compact disc, and all kinds of things like that. I guess the biggest involvement that I did there was the cell phone. We had the first cell phone in 1982, and on and on and on. My life has just been so wonderful. But it continued on through some of this. This was the opening, the first day that it was sold. Nipper and Chipper, they sent in to me. That's the front door of what now is Ham Radio's Heil Sound. But all of this stuff continued on, and we had so much fun. But back to radio. Yeah. But we did a lot of things, converting CB radios to 10-meter FM. If you remember that was quite a deal. And I was kind of the godfather of 10-meter FM. We made kits that we sold. But I got serious with radio. What happened to my Art Collins audio? What? It was mushy, and it was bassy, and it was difficult to understand. All the gear, they were imports, but they had matching microphones. What do you mean by match? The only matching they had was painted the same color. I'm serious about this. I cannot be more serious. I get really, really upset because most of these manufacturers, they didn't do much with audio. Something had to be done, and I did. What we did is I took a little equalizer circuit out of one of my consoles that we had for the rock and roll venues, and I built the EQ 200. Some of you might have had one. You might have own one. You know it. You certainly probably read about it in QST because it got the cover award. I didn't even know there was such thing in 1982. And it really started making things happen in this particular venue of amateur radio. Nothing had ever been done like that before. So I reopened my plant. It had been closed for several years. And I applied a lot of the knowledge from Paul Klipsch, listening abilities of tuning those Wurlitzers, the years of building skills from K0DGE at CBS. And the Heil sound brings serious changes to the audio sections of present day gear. Was invited by manufacturers to build a truly a matching microphone, not just something that was painted the same color. Well, the situation was that these microphones, they really didn't pay attention to what we needed. You see, we're only dealing with 3K wide. That's the whole deal, 3K wide. And we have to deal with phasing. Everything we do has to do with phasing, but you never hear about it much. If you do, they don't really talk much about what it is, but we're going to talk about it. All of our microphones have a lot of phasing done in them, and also equalization. And you see, the situation there is that I learned from Fletcher Munson about the Fletcher Munson curve. Did you guys ever know about the Fletcher Munson curve? I bet you didn't. Well, if you didn't, you need to go spend some time, because what you're going to discover is that our ears are not flat. We do not want to hear flat. They put the telephone system together, 2 wires from New York, California. All about, this was wild. Every 50 miles, they were little huts that checked the average of the voltage. They checked the frequency response. So they should have been the same, right? So when they hooked it all up, this is what they heard. They heard something that kind of sounded like this. And it's like, well, how you hear me? I don't hear you very well. Why? It's all there. Yeah, but it doesn't have any life to it. Well, the word they're looking for is articulation. And I think I kind of drug that into the ham radio market. I've never heard it by anybody else until I came along. Let's put some articulation back into it. Now, what did I do? I should put a camera on this one so you guys could see what I'm doing. You understand now how easy it is to understand. I didn't change the level. I changed 2 things. I changed the mid-range from 2 to 3K. That's a parametric. So we can change the parameters from 2 to 3K. And I punched up about 6 dB a gain at that frequency. Listen how much easier it is to understand what I'm saying, even as I whisper. That is what we're looking for. And they put Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Munson on the case. And they made them figure out what they had to do. So just about everything you have, because I have a lot of these guys, oh, need no EQ. Oh, yes, you do. Everything you listen to has been equalized. No, might not have the bass treble control, but the engineers have put a little rise in that 2 to 3K so that the spoken word is much easier to understand. You don't need any EQ? Good, I'll take it away. I just took 2 or 3K out. You see what I'm talking about? This is the kind of thing I hear from a lot of stations. They're hard to understand. But hey, I'm running a kilowatt. Well, I don't care how many kilowatt you're running. Let's bring that back up. And you can hear and understand how much easier it is when we do elevate that. And so everything we build, our microphones, our headsets, Everything is elevated. And we maintain that. It's there without a lot of equalization. We've done Carrie Underwood's microphone since the day she won the award. There's Keith Urban. He came to me one day and said, you got to build me a microphone that I don't have to have my sound man fiddle around with. I could be here for an hour naming people. And it's all because they heard about this little crazy guy in Illinois. But all of our headsets, all of our microphones, all have that rise and a lot of other things. One of the things that Joe Walsh wanted me to do is phasing. He said, man, you got to help me. He said, you remember that big antenna you had? He said, when I come through there in a bus and we get on 2 meters, you turn that around. I couldn't hear you. Why? Well, it's all about phasing. What's that? A lot of people hear the word, but they don't understand it. If you have not learned anything today, the next 5 minutes will never leave your soul. You're never going to forget it. And there again, what's so sad is you never hear about it. Nobody ever does it. What we're going to do is I'm going to do not a magic act. I have 2 microphones. Let me get them out here. Okay. These 2 microphones, let me plug them in. Now, in order to use them, I'm just going to, and I'm doing this so you know I'm not playing games. I'm not using 2 channels and all. I'm using 1 channel. Here we go. By the way, I should tell you, I got to change that microphone is not quite as hot. There we go. This is a PR22 that we built for Paul Rogers and Keith Urban. Did you notice how much more it was elevated? I didn't have to do it. It did it. So I might have to regress a minute. This is very special to me. This microphone, we have a custom shop in our plant. And we built this PR35, which most all of the top vocalists have been using PR35s. This one belonged to Charlie Daniels, the great American Charlie Daniels. He used our microphones for about 10 to 12 years. All 30-some microphones were Heil microphones. He loved us. He loved the sound of them because they didn't have to equalize it. And because of his tremendous spirit of America, we built that for him. My guys, just fantastic. Okay, here we go. This gets very serious now. This is not something to take lightly because you're not going to forget it. Oh, I see. I kept hearing that 2-meter thing in my ear. Okay, here we go. I have 2 microphones. They're PR22s. Yeah, I know they're different colors, but they're a Y cable. No special thing here. They're just paralleled. Pin 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3. Okay, they're in phase. There's another little thing that we can play with. You know that when you double your power, how many decibel does that rise? 3. You know how loud 3 dB is? You're going to hear it. This is not an act. This is a piece of science. When you double this, it's going to be 3 dB. I should put a camera over here. You can see it rise, 3 decibel. When I bring these 2 microphones together, here we go. You might want to cover your ears. Really? Wait a minute. I talked about listening. Now do this with me, really. Everybody, do this. Close your eyes. We're going to listen. We're mentally going to really get into this. On the count of 3, we're going to lose 3 dB. This could be 500 watts. This could be a kilowatt if you are running overly. Go. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Huh, yeah, Heil's just playing games. No, he's not. We're going to do it again. Here we are. We're going to take 3 dB away. 1, 2, 3. You know why you didn't hear? Because the human being can't determine 3 dB. We can't do it. All we could in a, a very organized and echo chamber, lots of money, which I don't think any of our shacks are like that. I got close here because there are no parallel walls in my new studio, but that's for the organ. But anyway, interesting. That's not what I'm here for. Here we go. I have this magic little plug. What I do with that plug is I hooked up pin 1 to 1, but I hooked up pin 2 to 3 and 3 to 2. Oh, well, it still works. What's a big deal, Hyle? They both sound the same, still work. Yeah, they're out of phase. When I talk in the red one, it goes down to diaphragm. When I talk in this one, it goes up. What do you do when you put them together? They cancel. And I mean to tell you, they cancel. Now, wait a minute. How many things? Jeremy, do we have 2 hours more? I could be here all night telling you about my favorite subject. Phasing is in everything you do. Everything. Antennas. Anybody here has a phased array? Why not? It's an amazing thing. Let me unplug this. There we go. PR40. Phasing. You take 2 dipoles. I had these put up in the 10-year stay I was down in the Ozarks. We had a second home there. 65 foot high, 65 foot apart dipoles. But down at the base, I could tie them together, but I had a phasing line of 22 feet and switch them back and forth. And I could put one of them out of phase. Hey, you remember Dr. Yagi? Huh? You all have a Yagi, I bet you. You know how it works? Here's how it works. He took a driven element and he figured it out by math. They didn't have computers. And he figured if he went so far in front, he could get a little bit of gain. If he went another one, put another direct, another, he could get up to 10, 15 dB on the VHF or wherever. But he could take another one, make it a little longer, space it the right space, and he could get reduction. So when you turned it to California, you didn't hear the East Coast, vice versa. Why, as Joe Walsh asked me, why don't you do that to my microphone? Because none of them do. I don't care if you have a $5,000 whatever. No, they pick up the whole room. What in the world is that about? And it destroys my whole concept of what these manufacturers should be doing. It's not right. So we did it right. First of all, the big deal is that all microphone manufacturers, all the little ball mics everybody use for you today, they all have 4 little holes around them. And that's all they think they needed for rear rejection. No, it's not. So what I did is I took the bottom of our dynamic element. First of all, we were the first to be able to do a large dynamic. I think it's 1.25 inches. Nobody's ever tried it. No, done it. They didn't try it. Sure tried it, failed. I know that from their engineer. He said, we just couldn't get it. He came to me at a show one time, at a trade show. How'd you do that? I'm a ham. I can do these things. We opened the whole bottom of that element all the way around. And we have this, what I call collection tube. And it all comes up the side and it lands into that 360 degrees around. Guess what? It's out of phase. Huh. Check this out. First of all, Joe wanted a microphone that he didn't have to stand in front of that stupid little ball all the time. Oh, but that's everybody uses one. Yeah, until they found out there are other people. 180 degrees, and if you close your eyes, you wouldn't know I'm moving it around. But that wasn't a biggie. I'm not playing games. This microphone, because of what I just showed you, has 40 dB of rear rejection. You ready? It's gone. Oh, it still works, but it's 40 dB down. So therefore, all of a sudden, the PR40 become the darling of the broadcast people. Sirius Radio just bought another 250, tossed out their REs. And it did just on and on and on. We're so blessed because I never intended for this to be used in ham radio. I built it for entertainment groups. It's an incredible bass drum bike and stuff, but wow, it's become very popular in ham radio because finally the gear caught up with it. But then we took all of that stuff and applied it to the operators that are real serious about this hobby. And who is that? Of course, it's the DXers and the contesters. And there were a few people trying to build headsets and they copied us, but sorry, didn't make it happen. We did. And the Pro 7 has become the darling. Why? Because of a couple of things. First of all, that one control on it is left or right, so you can balance it. You ready for this one? We're the only headphone manufacturer, and we've been doing it for years, has a phase reversal switch. What does that mean? That means that you can move signals around in your head just by reversing the phase. You hear some piled up out here, and you got a little weakie back here. Reverse the phase. Boom, he's up front. Why do we not have more time? This will give you something to think about when you can't go to sleep. You have two cables coming in from a DVD, from a satellite receiver, anything. You have two, left and right, right? You put them into your ProLogic receiver of Dolby's. How do you get 4 channels out of that? You only fed it 2. How do you get a center channel and a rear channel? How'd that happen? Here's how it happened. Here's exactly how it happened. They win, and I was there for one of the things they were cutting at Skywalker. It was really fascinating. They had the 50-piece orchestra in the kit down here. 2 microphones for stereo, doing that, okay? They had a booth over here, a glass booth with Indiana Jones. He went over there and had a microphone. And then they had some guy back here with cowbells and all kinds of things for noises in the rear in another booth. Those 2 microphones were out of phase from these 2. So what did ProLogic do? It picked them out and it put stereo here. The center channel was out of phase. Boom, on his own amplifier, his own speaker. The back's in out of phase of all of them. It's all done, gentlemen, because of phasing. And I don't understand why we don't hear about this stuff, man. It disgusts me because it's cool. It's science, I know that, but it all is applied. It's applied very well in ham radio, but a lot of times nobody cared to tell you about it. This was another thing that I had to do with this. The speakers, I learned this from Paul. The speakers had to be way behind because on all other headsets, the speakers right here. Well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that because I'm going to put those in a cavity, and that's going to be a tuned cavity, another thing that no other headset does. But the speaker, look how far away it is from your head, your ear. So you don't have feedback. And this is really helping a lot of people that have hearing aids. They have replaceable elements. I have a special element that I designed for ICOM. Just on and on and on and on. It's something that I should tell you. Really ticks me off when I read EHAM, and I read it every day. And I read the guy say, "Oh, that dang oil headset's so hard on my head." He didn't read his instructions. Everything I do has a steel band underneath the pad. So if it's pushing your ear, made it big. You got a pinhead like me, do that. Adjust your headsets. It works. All of our headsets do that. But we're very blessed and very honored that many of the D-expeditions for many years, since 1985, have been using our technologies. And it's technologies that have been around, just nobody ever paid attention. In 2000, well, it actually started in 1999. I got a letter from Dr. Inouye, that's the founder and president of ICOM. And he had their the IC 781. Remember that great transceiver that had a screen on it? It was the first one that had a screen. And he had my gold line microphone. And he had my equalizer. I couldn't believe it. It's like, wow, what are you doing here? I'm thinking about building new line of gear, and I want your equalizer in it. And so a piece of history, everything from Pro 1 all the way through to the great 7610, all has the Heil EQ 200 in it. A couple of years later, Dr. Hasegawa, who owns Yaesu, come to me, I want to do it better. So we did a parametric. So from the 9000 all the way through to the new 101 has a parametric that I helped them do. And again, it's wonderful to be able to work with these people. We build a microphone specific for ICOM. We even call it the ICM because it only works on ICOM. Because see, they have phantom power. They want to power up their electorate. Well, we have a very special, not just a little old crunchy type that's been used for years. It's a high level and it works great. You don't have to do anything. You just plug it in and talk. I like to add a little treble once in a while. I roll off a little low end. I do this to all of them. Well, we don't need all those lows. Roll off that low end. I proved that to you a while ago. But there again, the stuff, let me change this. This all started back in, it was about 84. I came up with the gold line, which has become one of the most popular microphones in those days and still is. It had two elements in it. And what was the second element for? It was you got this, the worst sounding microphone ever. Well, why would I build a terrible sounding microphone? Because I built it for the DX contesters to cut through the noise. We don't need any low end. We don't need any, we need 2 to 3K big time. And so with a flip of a switch, bingo, and it's very articulate. That's what we're looking for. Articulation. That just adds coloration. But when you're trying to reach that special country, we don't care about how you sound. We only care about squeezing it down into that. And it's just so wonderful when things work, and we're there to help you with all of that. So there again, we're there to try to help you. And this gold line has really been something, with thousands and thousands of them over the years. And we still build it, called the Gold Elite, 2 elements in it. One thing I need to tell you before we kind of get around here, because everybody asks me about it. It's probably one of the things that put me in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We're the only manufacturer in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What a blessing. And they have the console that I did, Quadrophenia. We built the first quad system for Arena for Pete Townsend to do Quadrophenia. I lived with The Who for 6 years. We've become very good friends All these people, if they weren't friends with me first, I don't work with them. It's just the way it was, because I wasn't drugging with them. No, I'm there to help them. And so I became good friends. This is quite a story. I like to tell this to the ham radio ops. Here we go. Remember the World War II pilots? And they had one of these things, you know, they strap it onto your throat. Because the planes were so noisy. Just have little carbon microphone or pads. You strap that around your neck, and your voice would modulate those. You plug this little guy into your T600 or whatever transmitter, and your B29, away you go. In 1939, there was a ham radio operator, W6HU. Alvino Ray, anybody remember him? Was a guitar player with the King sisters. He married one of the King family. Being a ham, I understand, man, this is 1938, 39, he's goofing around. He put this on his wife's throat, and he put her behind a curtain, put it in neutral like a microphone. He put the output of his guitar amp here. So when his guitar played and it's on his wife's throat, it modulated her voice. And it sounded like the guitar was singing, really. Well, that lay dormant until Pete Drake in 1950 picked that idea up, built a little speaker and a little box with a little piece of hose, and did a thing called Forever Yours. It was a big hit in 1950. He was a steel guitar player, had a nice studio. And along about 64, George Harrison had him come over and do his mixing and bring some of his gadgets. They didn't use them on the record, but they were there. And he had a young guitar player. He was, I think, 16 or 17, and from England. He was kind of like sitting in the back and played with him, whatever, because he was a good guitar player. That guitar player was Peter Frampton. And I'm really sad because being such really good friends that Peter and I we've been friends for a long, long time, back in the Humble Pie days. That's where we first met. And never hear much about him playing there. But anyway, he saw that little box, and he was always intrigued. When they do their breaks, Pete would play something on the steel with it, make it talk. Well, Peter's wife, and girlfriend it was, he wrote a song, Penny for Your Thoughts, Married in My Home in Marissa. That happened a lot. A lot of the UK, I told you I was good friends with some of them. They had to do that to get the green card. And so I helped them. Some of them I gave a job. 4 or 5 of them moved to Marissa and bought a house, worked for Heil Sound. And she called me one day after this was in 74, and she said, Bob, I need a Christmas present for Peter. Don't send him a guitar. He's got it out of him. I said, okay. Well, a couple of years before that, Joe Walsh and I got together. He knew about that box because Pete Drake and a couple of the guys had built one for Joe, but it was just that little box. And he did Rocky Mountain Way with it. Whoa, okay. But I was setting up the bands for his tour of the James Gang. So we had to have all the equipment. But what are we going to do about that box, Heil? So we came up with the talk box. It's a 100-watt talk box. This one's signed by Peter. That one up there is signed by Joe. And serial number 1's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But it's just a 100-watt driver and a pass filter. Where you go. And sent it to Penny. She gave it to Frampton. You know the rest of the story. Yes, we are still very, very good friends. It just goes on and on and on and on. But there's so many other things. I hope a lot of you picked up on the Pine Board project we did here. It was fascinating. We had over 1,000 people, and there's more coming that have built this. We did it every week on Ham Nation. You can go to our website, highsound.com, and you'll see the Pine Board. Click that. There's probably 50, 60 pages there now. All of the things are there. And it was a fascinating time for me again because I was getting people to build. And boy, I got to tell you, but oh man, did we get blown away by that, guys? Oh, I got so many flames. You're going to kill somebody they've never built before. No, we constantly reminded them to respect that high voltage. And it was fun, man. It's 5 watts AM, of course, on 75 or 40 meters. I finally rebuilt it. I should have gotten it down. It's up over my head. It'll do 3 bands. It'll do 160, 75, and 40. 5 watts AM. Guess what the purple knobs are for, guys? Equalization. It sounds great. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just crazy, but one of the things we did, W4 IQN, he's an ex graphics guy from General Motors. Look at those drawings. They're better than Heathkit. You really don't, all you need is that and the parts. You can put it together, and the parts are all available from Antique Electronic Supply. There's another thing we got all flustered about. Oh, you can get parts out. Sure you can. You go to Antique, they even have the kits put together. Tell them you want the Pine Board kit, bang, you got it. There's only one thing we can't do, and that's that thing way over on the right, the coil. Well, we could, and we taught them how to make one, but a lot of people didn't. So where do you go? MFJ. Oh, golly, just crazy stuff. But we're always working on new things, and Ham Nation's been a wonderful thing. We're in our 10th year. Every Wednesday night, I hope you're taking part in it. We need to get your club on. We're doing spotlights every week in clubs around the country to tell people what you're doing for your club, especially during the pandemic. What are you doing? Fascinating to hear what some of them are doing. And last but not least, the last thing I did was the parametric receive audio system. Again, I listen to a lot of this stuff, and I've got so many things going on, and the receivers are terrible. So what I did is I built the parametric receive audio system, and that's what you see behind me right here. It's a parametric mid equalizer, mid shelving, and lower shelving. It's got 2 headphone amps. Why would you have 2 separate headphones, Kyle? One for the logger, one for the operator. But guess what else you can do? And this is really cool. You can take a cable that we have, plug the left side of your headphone here and the right side there. So if you have a hearing imbalance, correct it, no problem. And there's also one for record. If you want to record, no big deal. Plug it in there. You don't have to do all kinds of Y cables. Let me see here. Sometimes this is Russian roulette. Let me find somebody and let you hear. First of all, I better get it flat the way you hear it. Okay, there we go. Now what we're going to do, that's a bunch of guys. Let me find one here that's a pretty good dude here. There we go. Now what we're going to do, first of all, we're going to increase the mid-range.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes people don't think that way.
Listen.
Well, if they're in that bind, they expect expect you to be nice.
Here, it's back the way you hear it.
Send you a get well card.
Get it same level.
Mine would be, hope you're feeling better, get to work card.
But when you increase that mid-range,
That's probably what he was thinking. Hope you get well soon, because we need.
I think you can hear from that. Not the greatest demo, but it's live and it really works. So there's so much that we still have in our in our bucket, I gotta tell you. But one of the rewarding things is becoming friends with all of you, all of the entertainers. But we're the only manufacturer in the Rock Hole. The mixer you see behind Sarah, that's the mixer that we and our sister company in England, IES, built for Quadrophenia. It was the first time that anybody had ever thought about it. And Townsend wanted to do it, and I did it. He said, come over here, I want to talk to you. But that rack on that's our own power amplifier, our own parametric EQ. I used George's, he came out with that a few years before, but we took that circuit and put it in a rack mount on the road. The first electronic crossover, there was an analyzer, the third one from the bottom. That was the first analyzer that we could have on the road. The bottoms are amplifiers. So the one on the right, that's a ZZ Top's mixer that I designed for Sun, and that was a big hit for them. The mixer all the way on the right, we used that in so many shows. And so those are some of the things that are in the Rock Hall. And gosh, I got to tell you, I was surprised and very honored. And to end the whole thing, I know we didn't go to college. I hardly made it out of high school, truly, because I was doing very well as an organist. And so I knew what I wanted to do. But here a couple of years ago, we were awarded an honorary doctorate in music and electronics. So again, it's all about ham radio. And you guys helped me get there because I listened to you. I listened intently because I want to be there to help you make it happen when you build. And then, of course, last Dayton that we could go, I was awarded the Bill Orr Award for building, if you know anything about Bill. So these are all things that I could not have done without all of you giving me ideas and helping me to put these things together. It's rewarding. Jeremy, have I put everybody to sleep so far?
No, that was a great presentation. Great presentation.
Any questions? Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Bob, for joining us. That was really great.
Bob, on behalf of the Mid-Atlantic Amateur Radio Club, we want to thank you so much for the presentation. You're like a college course in an hour. We learn more from you about audio than reading a half a dozen books.
Well, thank you. I learned it all because of ham radio. And I didn't have any, I tried to read books, but they weren't right. They didn't hit the point, and we needed something to help me. Paul Clips was that person to help me. Paul and Larry Burrows at KMOX. That was so cool that these guys entered my life. And then who would expect that some of these people would come to me with crazy ideas, and I do them. But Mr. Dolby came to me, and all these guys, they were giants. And I mean, to me, they were like rock stars. I knew who they were from reading about them, but here I was by side. They taught me so much. It's all because of ham radio.
Question? I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, go ahead, Barry.
I just switched over to an iPad. I was watching this on a big TV with great sound. Thank you very much. Fascinating, just amazing stories. Are there any advantages in intrinsic with the electret mic that ICOM has chosen to use over the years versus the dynamic mics that Kenwood, Yaesu, et cetera, have used. I've owned both Kenwood and ICOM radios, and when I set them up on single sideband or on AM, I've always had good audio reports for a single sideband signal. But I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on comparing condenser mics, I'm old time, to dynamic mics. Thank you.
If you know anything about what we do, know me closely, I hate condenser mics. They're a scourge. They should never be allowed to be on the planet. Okay? Why do I say that? Because they're too damned expensive, number one. I'm talking about real condensers, $5,000 and $6,000. They pick up the whole room. And I guess that's okay if you're in a controlled recording studio with a 50-piece orchestra. But I see these guys with their egos a little higher than whatever, and they put them on ham radio and you hear all the background noise. Oh, I got a noise gate. So then you get up after all this, because the noise are tunneling on. We don't need that. And so that's why I wanted to build a large dynamic. And I did, and it works, and nobody's been able to do it. Go check it out. Everybody's little half-inch, three-quarter. This thing's 1.25 inches. And it's wonderful. The entertainers love it because of what I showed you about it. Now, why ICOM uses it? They did it in the beginning. From the 701 it started, and they were cheap. They were cheap. Let's face it, they were cheap. So they stuck it in there. They didn't care about how it sounded. But over the years, they got a little better. That's why Dr. Inouye said, I'll do something for me. So I did. The ICM. And the ICM, if you haven't had plugged that into your ICOM, oh, buddy, it's amazing. And we're very happy with it. The other situation is that we make our own cable. That's another thing that really bugged me. Oh, man. This cable is awful. You get the cable and you take it, you end up with 2 or 3 little strands of 24 gauge wire. No. I don't want any of that. No. What I want is 18 gauge. There's 2 of them in a silver 100% shield. I really mean 100%. It's not little, you know what I'm talking about. This baby is really tight and it solders like a dream. But here's the kicker. All microphones for ham radio have all the wires inside one little stupid crappy shield. Well, wait a minute. The audio, which is going to a very sensitive input, is laying right next to a DC for push to talk. And they're all wrapped with this junk. I have fixed so many RFI problems just by using our cable, because our cable is not like any other. First of all, it's very flexible. Dual 18 gauge audio inside a shield, 100% silver shield. The DC 218 gauge is outside of that shield. Now, why didn't somebody do this? Why wasn't it some of those $1 million paid engineers? And answer that question. You can't, because they didn't care. Well, I care, because when I put this stuff together, I'm on the air. Guess what? I'm going to be on the air shortly after this. I'm on the air every morning using all of my stuff over here. That's all my early days. And this is all great stuff, but it isn't great if it doesn't work right. The only thing is, I can make it work right. So what we do here is make things for me, and then I get to share it with you. But the cable is really cool. And then the other thing I hate are the connectors. What a joke. They're made by Foster. They were designed in 63, I think, for CB radio. They got that little spindly thing on it that you can't almost need needle nose to make it work. Get it in there. Look at that baby. And our cable clamps. There's two of them. One for the push to talk line that comes back out, and it fits right into our cable, and we don't need black tape to hold it. You do it yourself. The dang thing pulls out. Ain't going. You can pull your car with this stuff. It's all designed for us by us. And if you haven't seen some of this stuff, check it out, and you'll discover that there's some pretty exciting things going on. Go to our website and look it up. You can order it right there, or DX Engineering has it. And we're very, very happy with all of these things that make things better for us. But that electric situation, Dr. Inouye, he asked me to do something better, and we did. And I not only did that, I call it the ICM for ICOM. Nope, don't work on the Kenwood. Nope, don't work on the ASU. It can. It can. All you need is a capacitor and a resistor, and you can make it work, because every radio in one of their pins has at least 8 to 10 volts there for all kinds of other things, but you can make it work. But why? You buy yourself a PR781 or a PR40, and I guarantee you the PR781 is the darling. We are so fascinating with the sales of that. My gosh, it's the best microphone out there for ham radio. PR781, check it out, and it works so well. But that's the answer. It's a long answer, but it's the way it happens with some of these manufacturers. And Dr. Inouye was smart enough to figure it out and came to the source.
Thank you. I collect D104s. My wife has some beautiful drawings of them.
I have one. Hang on, you're gonna go crazy if I can show you. I think I know where it is. Hang on, stand by. It's not. I have a D104 that a guy brought me at Dayton, and it's incredible. It's walnut and ash, all wood, unbelievable. And it even has one of our HC5s in it. We make a kit, so you can pull out that crystal thing and put a dynamic in it. It works great. Yeah. Well, good luck to you on that. That sounds like fun.
Hi, I have a comment.
Yes.
My name's Austin, Kilo Alpha 3, Tango, Tango, Tango. I'm a blind QRP operator from Philly, and I just wanted to say I have a ProSet 7IC hooked up to an Elecraft KX3, and it sounds wonderful. So I just wanted to thank you.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Really nice. Glad we can help.
Hi, Bob. Frank, WB2BXO, with a comment. First of all, I wonder if you know my brother, an entertainer, Neil Jason. I think he's at least worked with some of the guys you've worked with. Does that name sound familiar?
No, but that...
I know you've worked with a lot of people. Just curious. Oh, I'm not sure why you're seeing. Let me switch on another light here so you can see me. Anyway, and it was interesting what you said about the Drake equipment. My first station was a Drake TR4 with that silly banana microphone, and I remember almost nobody seemed to hear me on single sideband for years, and I always assumed it was because of my cruddy antenna. And I learned later that the banana was just not well matched to the Drake radio, and it didn't work the way it said it would in the manual. You had to turn up the gain all the way for it to work, supposedly.
Yep.
Yeah, I eventually got, and a couple of years later, my dad and I bought one of your ICOM headset microphones, and I remember we were having trouble with it keying the Vox, and my dad called customer service, and he was floored that you answered the phone. So thanks very much. After that, the microphone worked fine for years. In fact, I think Saul has it now. He's on here.
Hey, I love talking to you guys and gals. That's what I love doing. I love sharing this stuff. I mean, this is all science to a lot of people, and to us, it's just common nature. But I love sharing it because we don't get enough time together, and that's why I love all this Zoom stuff. I don't like the pandemic, no, but I really love the fact that we're able to get together and do things, and it's wonderful. We have the best customer service on the planet. I'm not kidding you. It's amazing. Donna, who is she does most all the repairs. Of course, she's been with me 26 years. She builds things. She can then know how to fix them because she builds them, and she's wonderful with the public. So drop her an email and bingo, she'll be to you and fix your stuff if you have any problems.
I have one question. This is Fred, K2HA. And the question is that my voice gets sore sometimes when we're in a contest. If I have to raise my voice to make sure the single sideband actually puts out enough power. So does your microphone save the voice so I don't have to talk so loud?
What kind of microphone, what kind of rig, all that? What kind of transmitter is it?
I'm using a Yaesu FT102 with the desk microphone, Yaesu desk microphone.
I would do a couple of things. People with low voices, you probably need a little bit more preamp. And the best thing I can tell you, and you will be the top of the pile, you got to buy a couple of things. First of all, look at our PR781 or 22, one of those. Then you go over to Julius Jones, W2IHY. And that's your answer. Those two together are magic. I have a lot of people I help. And same situation, have very low voices, and not anymore. You can equalize that baby up, bring the gain up, whatever you want to do, and use the right microphone. It all starts at the microphone. And these companies don't build their microphones. They're things they buy from OEM. They put their name on them, and they fooled you for years. And so you want to get something that works for you. And I'm giving you what does, because I help many, many people. And I'm on this. Sometimes I get 100 emails a day with guys. That's what I do here, and helping them. And I'm not making this up just to sell gear. A lot of times we don't have to. But in this case, W2IHY and a PR781, you're going to be top of the pile. Trust me.
Okay, thank you.
There are other questions for Bob.
One of our latest things is, a lot of guys are doing remotes, and they're doing a lot of stuff out. Well, here's the new one that's really great, BM17. It's wonderful. And then the dual version too, either with an electric, our own IC, it's not the cheapos that the guys give you, and I'd also with the dynamic. This all started with this guy, and we still make it. 1985. I was building the elements only, and the group from Northern California come to me and say, "Hey, we're going to go to Navasa, and we want you to do us a headset." So I did, and we still make the BM10. Started the whole deal in amateur radio to get decent audio. these are all things that I am just so thrilled to help the guys with. Well, I probably should get out of here and go see what's going on because that awaits me. I do an organ show every Saturday night on the WTWW, and I'll do the recording tonight for them. You guys listen to that? 5.085. What an incredible thing! They have a lot of ham radio stuff on there, and great music. They hired a couple of these guys that old rock and roll guys from back in the 60s and 70s that were big dogs on DJs, you know, on rock and roll radio when it started. They're on WTWW these days. Just go to WWV and rock your dial. You'll hear them. 100,000 watts. It's really super. But I do an organ show every Saturday night at 7:30 right here from this here place right here. Fun stuff. Right here from this here place right here. Well, you guys will have to come and join us on Ham Nation one of these times. We'll have to spotlight your club. This club, right? Cool. All right. And I'm always around. Just my call at ARRL anytime. Don't be shy. Send me any kind of question, answer, gripes or not, or whatever. We'll help you out of it. So just let me hear from you.
A quick one, Bob, if you have another second. I think you mentioned a microphone that's good for connecting to the computer to use with remote ham radio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's that BM17, this guy. Of course, it depends on what you're going to do with it. Yeah, the wire's okay. What are you going to drive? That's the other thing. You can't just plug these things into a computer. That's something we're working on. The computer mics are terrible. Come on, Niall. There we go. Computer microphones are terrible. They have real junky elements, and they sound, I mean, they're terrible.
Well, they seem to be omnidirectional.
So we made one that doesn't. And what I do, if I'm doing any kind of remote, I use a thing called Elise's. It's a little mixer. You can all use a Behringer. They make a small one, like $100. But they have a USB output. And you can use the dynamic element of this, equalize it up the way you want. Oh man, does that work nice? Plug that USB into your computer. Now you're getting somewhere. And we're just really seeing great increase in all of that because of the pandemic. A lot of people want to do things from home. But they go to Google and buy some little $40 or $4 piece of crap. And it's awful. You know, that's not good for you because you have to have a nice signal. You have to sound good. And the only way to do that is do it properly. You can't do it with junk. And you want to put a good face forward so you have a nice camera and lighting. What do you do about the audio? No. You buy yourself a really good headset and like an Elise's or a Behringer, and they'll have USB on the back. That's the key, and plugs right in. That's what you're listening to here. That a try.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good luck to you. We'll see.
Could I add one more quick comment?
Yeah.
Are we disconnected?
No.
Lost your video.
Eyes are here.
Okay. About 15 years ago, I got a chance to get up to W1AW and I went into their station. And lo and behold, in the corner on an old oak desk was a national NC 303, something like that,
yep,
and a Johnson Viking Valiant. And the operator up there said, I said, oh, could I operate the Valiant on 80 meters, 75 meters? He said, well, do you know how to use that kind of a radio? I said, yeah, I built 2 of them. Yeah. So, yep, I know. And he said, well, you had just set it up and you were had been working on the audio for that for 75 meters AM, 3885. And I said, oh, I'd love to get on. This was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I put it on 3885, tune it all up into, one of their long dipoles. And suddenly I became, the DX station, so to speak. All the New Englanders, were hearing W1AW on 3885, and I was in demand. And for the next 2 hours, I had so much fun with that radio on AM and a beautiful national receiver. And of course, everyone gave superb audio. And these guys are pretty critical, as you recall, up in the New England Sound area. So thank you for that contribution. I have no idea if the Johnson Viking Valiant is still in the W1AW station, but I certainly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Did Joe Garcia tell you how it got there?
I think Joe said something, you helped set it up, but he didn't say how it got there.
Oh, no.
And I think it might have been a D104 mic, I'm not sure.
No. That whole thing came about. Oh, there's a long story about it, but they invited Joe Walsh and I to come to AW and work a contest. And I asked Joe, you want to go? Well, yeah, we'll go. But he wanted to talk to him and give him his thoughts about stuff before we went over to 1AW, which he did. Anyway, we get there, and they had a brand new ICOM 7800. It hadn't even been released yet, but they knew we were coming. They got word. And so Joe said, think this thing will work on AM? And I'm going, why wouldn't it? So being the two scallywags that we are and the two lovers of AM that we are, we got going on AM on a Friday night. It was a contest. That was what was even crazier. It was a contest. Here's Walsh and I at 1AW working the contest from AW on AM. I thought I had a picture of that. Oh, it's in the other computer. Anyway, we bombarded the East Coast for 2 days on AM. And coming back in the plane, Joe and I said, they need some AM there. So we worked together, dedicated that equipment. It needed to be restored. So I took it to a friend of mine, and he went all through it. And he also drove it up there from Indiana up there and installed it, set it up. Then we went up, set it up. And that all came about from Walsh and Heil. And we got them to do an AM, and now they got a broadcast transfer. They got a big gates there, thanks to Bob Allison and Tim Tron and a couple of other guys up there. So we're very happy that W1AW is back on AM. Yay.
It was especially nice to be on an old big wooden desk and set up in the corner of W1AW.
Tell you whose desk that was? Oh no, that's the history. That was Hiram Percy Maxey's desk.
Oh my gosh.
Brought it over one day and said, hey, here's Hiram's desk. Would you like to have it? Yeah. Well, what are you going to put on it? What else? And so that's how that all got there. True story. Crazy. Well, this has been fun, guys. Really fun. And let's do it again. We'll talk. I got so I come talk all day about antennas. I love antennas. I just did one today. We put up a new 40-meter antenna here at this location. I didn't have a very good one. And we're just building this studio and getting this all together. So we're ready to go. Thank you very much for inviting me. And we'll do it all again. Call me, Jeremy. Let's set it up to get you guys on Ham Nation for a little bit.
All right. Now, I think Ned had his hand up. I don't know if he had a question that he wanted to ask.
Who that?
Before you go. And Ned, did you have a question? I guess maybe not. All right. Thanks so much, Bob. This is a really great presentation. We could listen to you for 2 hours.
Oh, yeah, I could.
Well, we could fire up the organ for another hour. If you guys are into theater organs, I'm your guy. Take care, have fun, get on the air, let people know we're around, right? And as I said, send me an email, good or bad. I'm always there for you, and keep this hobby alive, because it certainly has been my life, as you learned tonight. It's something I want everybody to know. I'm not bragging about anything. I'm sharing with you how important amateur radio is, that we can get these kids involved, and look what happened to so many of us because of ham radio. Thanks, everybody. Let's see where we go from here, because I don't know where we go from here. I know that this remote thing is really catching on, and I do know for a fact that this pandemic has really caused some very interesting things. So we're gonna be able to be here for a while. Ham radio is not dead, that's for darn sure. So keep it alive, and I appreciate you having me on. So be good and all that good stuff. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for everybody attending the MARC meeting. Hope we see you soon again.
You're invited to join us for any of our future meetings, and we do have our nets on Wednesday and Sunday nights at 8:30 p.m. So 147.060 and 145.130. So please join us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you
Now
very
that I
much.
figured out- now that I
Thanks,
figured
guys.
out
Great, great night.
Now that I figured out how to unmute, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. It's very good.
All right. Should I shut down the YouTube?